Welcome to the Childcare Genius podcast, the world's leading authority on childcare marketing, mindset, expansion, and profitability. Each episode will feature interviews with the brightest minds in the childcare industry to guide you into becoming a smarter business leader. Our hosts have opened 10 schools while raising 5 children. They are certified business coaches and are the top-selling childcare business book authors of all time. This episode is sponsored by Childcare Genius Marketing. Let Childcare Genius Marketing help you get fully enrolled and fully staffed. Visit childcaregenius.com for more details. Let's welcome to the Childcare Genius podcast our hosts, Brian and Carol Duprey.
Hello, and welcome to the Childcare Genius podcast. I am Sindye Alexander, COO of Childcare Genius. I'm filling in this week for Brian Duprey, who is our normal host and founder of Childcare Genius, but he can't be with us this week. I have with me today an amazing guest who I'm super excited about chatting with. Her name is Jessica Kelley, and she currently owns the Red Barn Child Care Center in Clarksville, Tennessee. She's got over 23 years of experience in childcare. They're working on their second location right now. I'm going to let her tell you all about that. But, I thought it'd be really great to have a conversation with Jessica all about her expansion, how she builds a great parent experience, what she does for marketing, all of that stuff. So we're going to get a wealth of knowledge from this childcare leader, industry veteran, and member of Childcare Genius University. Jessica, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself to our listeners? Let them know a little bit about, how you got started, what your program looks like, what your goals are, just anything you'd like to share so we can get to know you as a childcare leader.
Sure. Well, my journey in early childhood started 23 years ago as a mom of a toddler who was trying to do the work-life balance. And so, started out as a 2-year-old teacher and, pretty quickly progressed to administration. I think that was more of my thing, was seeing the difference that you could make from the top trickle down. And after I had worked in a program for 7 years as a director, my husband and I were given the opportunity to purchase our first center. And so we were very blessed to do that. And then, so we've worked side by side for the past 13 years. And then we just currently purchased a second location that actually touches our first location. So now we have 2 centers on 7 acres, and it's a really cool story that we probably won't get all into today, but just, being able to have your family work together at a business has just been wonderful. And my children have grown up in childcare. My grandchildren are currently in childcare in my center. So it's just a very special thing, I think, for us to be able to witness that.
You brought up that family aspect because I had a similar experience, with my childcare centers. My daughters all worked in my program. My husband was my partner, and he worked right alongside me for many, many years. He since transitioned, but many years we worked side by side together. And not too many people can do that. That can be around family that much, or husband that much, or kids that much. There's the parent-child relationship, there's the boss-employee relationship, there's the husband-wife, there's the business leaders. How did you navigate that? Were there any issues that you had to learn how to overcome with any of those mixy-matchy relationships in your family and running your business?
Yes, it's definitely has pros and cons because you're never really away from work when you're married to your business partner. But at the same time, a lot of people go home and just vent to their spouse, but they don't really understand the inner workings of their frustration. And so with us, that is different because he knows exactly what I'm talking about because he lives it. And so it definitely has its challenges, but I can't imagine doing it without him. And he I made him do a podcast with Brian and Carol. And so I told him that was the only one I would ever ask him to. So he's not with us today, but he's the yin to the yang. Like I'm the visionary and he's the realist. And so like I'm the female version of Brian, your counterpart. And then like Jeremy is like the Sindye who's like, okay, you want to do this. That's great. Let's talk about how that would actually happen. And so just really good team that we have.
Love that. That's kind of funny because you really described my relationship with Brian like to a T. It's like Brian's got all these big ideas, and I'm like, okay, how do we make that happen? How do we put the pieces in place to orchestrate that? So I love that. And it really does. I mean, when I worked with my husband in childcare for many, many years, it really does help your business when you both know what's going on. And it can also help your relationship when you both know what's going on at work. You know what I mean? And you're building something together and you have common goals. I know, it can be a source of contention for some families, but it sounds like you guys have put some lanes of responsibility. You figured out what you're good at. You work in your lanes and you communicate about the other stuff so that way you can support each other. I love that. So you talked about you're in the process of opening your second center. So tell us a little bit more about that and what is going, where you're at in the process and, what your plans are to get that, fully up and running and, I guess to your dream goal.
Yeah. So we were given an opportunity or presented with an opportunity to purchase a pre-existing center. So our first center that we have has been in business for 20 years. This center is actually for that. So it's been in operation for 26 years and run by a nonprofit organization. And for them, the center just didn't really meet the mission of what they were trying to do moving forward with their organization. And so they were going to close. And when we found out that they were going to close, obviously everything that I do is for my love of children and the industry and the community. And so my husband and I were really like, whoa, this is going to impact 100 families, 25 to 30 staff members. And, we're already in an area that's considered a desert for childcare. And so we were like, what, this is a conversation that we would like to have. And since we joined Childcare University, we've been really on the fence, like, over the past year and a half about, okay, are we going to expand? Because we had already expanded our first location in 23. And so we were like, do we want to keep going in expansion or do we want to, start working on our exit strategy? We're like, we're going to try to figure out which direction we're going to go. And we really had to leave that up to, the Lord in that and say, okay, well, we're going to continue, in our plans and just see what comes up, see what comes available. And so when we heard that the center next door to us was closing, it was like, okay, the odds of that. So we reached out to that nonprofit organization and said, hey, instead of just closing the doors and reusing the building for another purpose, like, would you consider us taking it over for you? And so, immediately, I think because their heart was in the right place as well, they were like, okay, yeah, we would much rather do that than displace these families and staff. And so it took a little bit longer than we originally thought that was going to happen, but we took over the license September 1st. And so we've been there a few weeks. And it definitely is having its challenges where the first center that we bought, I was the director. So everybody knew me. We had a relationship. It was a very easy transition to do. But this one, no, like they don't know us. And so it's definitely a different dynamic with the relationships while you're trying to build that trust and you're having to make changes, but then have them buy into those changes. And so it's definitely been an interesting month. But spending the time that we've already spent in that building with the staff and with the kids, we're like, this is difficult, but it was the right decision because they really are like a family over there as well, which is what we look for.
Well, that is great. And I think it's amazing that you are working to support your community by keeping this vital service open because it is a need for, families to be able to work, for their children to have a safe place to go, to be cared for, to be educated. And when, I'm in a similar area where a lot of centers have closed down and there's just not a lot of options available. So thank you for finding a way to push your business forward and, to make a bigger difference in your community for kids. I love that. Now, I know you were just talking about some of the challenges that, that you're facing with the second location because it's an already established group of people that you have to kind of like infiltrate, get to trust, and then make some changes. But let's think about your first location. What is it about that location, that staff, the way you do business there? What is it about that place that parents love, that you're hearing from parents all the time? This is why we come here. This is why we love the Red Barn Child Care Center.
I would say because we consider it to be relationship-based care. That really is the foundation of everything, is your relationship between the staff and the teachers and the children and the parents. I mean, like, it's just one big, huge family as far as that goes. And, you know, a lot of times we are in a military town. And so a lot of times we're the only people that parents have to rely on. We're like the extended family. And so for them, we fill that void of sometimes the grandparents. Sometimes, they don't even have a neighbor that they know when they move here. And so we just really rely heavily on that relationship portion, because we've seen the difference that makes with our families and help support them as a whole. It's really easy to have that relationship with the children, like that's the fun part, but it's harder to support the family as a whole. And I used to be, a long time ago, one of those people that in every decision I'd say, well, this is what's best for the children, and the children come first and nothing else matters. And so, but I saw how that affected the staff. And so then I started, okay, well, now it's all about my teachers. And my teachers, if they're supported, then that will then in turn have an effect on the children. Well, then guess what? Then I forgot the parents. And so now I'm trying to make that puzzle piece fit together of like, how do you support everybody in the program? Because if you do that, then everybody wins.
That is so, so true. And, I was just recently doing another podcast with owner Diane Bronco out of New Jersey. And some of the things that she has done in her community to bring them together, to bring the community, like community businesses, she partners with, she orders pizza with, the place that's next door versus calling the food chain. She makes parent night outs for the parents. Like, it's a social activity for the parents. It's not a babysitting service so the parents can go out somewhere. And it's like, nobody is thinking of that type of a need. So like, I was just thrilled and like, I don't know, just super inspired talking with her. And then I'm talking with you just so shortly after that. And you're also talking about the way that you're supporting every part of your community, your staff, your teachers, your children, your parents. And when you can bring that all together, they all have a great relationship, and you are kind of like a cohesive foundation for that all to like gel in. Mm-hmm. That is just an amazing, amazing thing to make that environment where that can all take place. So thank you for sharing that with our viewers. What do you think is the biggest difference, like in forming this community and forming these relationships? What do you think is like the biggest key or the biggest thing that you did that helped everything gel together between the teachers, the staff, the kids, business needs?
Well, I hope it's just, that you're taking the time to look at that person as a human being. So I'll give you an example of what happened several weeks ago, and I had brought it up at the staff meeting, but I had a parent was coming through the door, and her toddler's teacher was coming through the opposite direction at drop off. And I guess the mom she was just wearing her emotions and wearing her mourning on her body. And the teacher asked her, just like you do, how are you, surface level, and she was like, oh, and she just the way that she responded. And she said a couple things about how the morning had been rough. And then the teacher stopped and she looked at her and she said, well, do you want to talk about it? Like, she just took like an extra minute or two to just say, do you want to talk about it? And I could hear the conversation from my office, and I just sat there like, I'm so proud of her. First of all, this girl is 18, 19 years old. So for her to say to somebody else, like, and to stop and have that mind frame of like, hey, I can make a difference in this person's day. I can take a few minutes. I told her, I'm not sure that I would have done that. I would have probably been like, I hear you, girl. It's been an awful morning. Have a good day. And just kept going. But I think the difference is that we try to do that with them. So then in turn, they do that with the parents. Like for instance, last week I had a young lady come into my office who's a newer employee, don't know her very well, but she's pregnant and she had a concern and she said, I just need to talk to somebody for a minute because my mom's passed away and I can't ask her. So, and I was just like, okay, come talk to me. I'll help you however I can. Just, building those relationships, even in the very, very beginning, and just taking the time to realize that even in our busy day, we all have so much going on. We all have so much stress, but you can take that extra time and just really see what that person needs from you. And I think that's been, I guess, just maybe role modeling that for the staff and doing that for them. And then in turn, they do that for the parents. And it really just helps with everything.
Yeah, and I think it's just who you are. You show up consistently as who you are enough that you've inspired your team to want to mimic or, to act in a way that I think they would see you guys act. And modeling that behavior and modeling that empathy and, taking the time for somebody because you've done it with them or they see you do it with other parents. That is so important because social skills are not taught quite the same way as they used to be. Now, I hear you because I personally feel like working with children, I mean, it's the ultimate business where you need to form those relationships. We're not just saying, hey, come buy our screwdriver, or, come buy these envelopes. We're like, we are working with the most precious people on the planet. We're being entrusted to care for them and educate them. So I see that is very important to you in the way you conduct business. But when somebody comes to you like fresh off the street, they're not a part of your community yet. How do you build trust with them, like right from the start, right from that first tour, that first phone conversation? How do you make them feel, like they can be a part of this great thing that you've created?
Well, I think it's easy to, tell someone everything about your business and how you do this and how you do that. But I think finding out what really they want and what they're looking for is the most important thing. Finding out, like what's important to them as a parent and what they're seeking in a program is the most important thing. Because I can tell you about mine and how much I love it and all these things all day long. But if I don't hit on those things that are important to you, then I didn't really feel that need in that moment. And so I think that's very important for us to do.
Yeah. And then when you listen to them and then you can demonstrate that you've heard them just by saying, oh, you didn't like how nap time was handled, blankety blank, then over here, this is what we do. And so I think this fits what your vision is for nap time a little bit better, or, whatever the issue is, you can show them how you can help them with whatever issue they're facing and that you've heard what they want. So yeah, I do think that is key. Now, what do you do to keep your center full? I know the Red Barn is pretty established. You're working on or perfecting enrollment or whatever with your new location. So what are the differences between like maybe your strategies and what is your plan to keep the doors full or the seats full?
Sure. Well, we've been very, very blessed with the Red Barn to have a lengthy wait list for a very long time. And so because we've built that reputation, we kind of have a legacy. We have staff and parents now who had, so let me rephrase that. We have former staff and former children who bring their kids to us for childcare now. And so it's kind of been for full circle where you're seeing those kids come back through. And so that's awesome. But with the filling the seats, especially at our newer location where they're not at capacity and that they've been running a little bit lower for the past, several years because that was just not an important thing for them to be full. So we're looking at, what can we offer? Like, what is our niche going to be? Because obviously our programs are going to be different. And I'm not trying to just cookie cutter everything that we do. We need to figure out like what works for them and what people need. And that necessarily doesn't fit into what we're doing at the Red Barn. So at Thrive, our goal is really to look and see, okay, what do people need in the community? Okay, so one thing I can tell you that they need is non-traditional hours. more part-time flexibility, drop-in, stuff like that. And so we have a lot of, like I said, military families. We have a lot of first responders and community workers in our area that have just non-traditional needs. And so we really want to be able to fill that niche for them.
So I love that you kind of have two different models for two different communities or two different groups. And so to really meet people in a variety of ways so that they can find that alignment. Usually, I mean, sometimes you enroll with the place that has the only opening available, and sometimes you get to pick like which program is more aligned with what I envision for my child. And so you're providing some options. How far apart are these schools? Are they like in the same town or in neighboring towns?
They're on the same property technically. Like
we
have,
okay.
Very close. Like our backyards touch, and it's like two corners. And so, I don't have to actually go on the road to get there. I can walk through. I mean, I don't, but I could walk through the property. Because we have 5 acres with the Red Barn, and then we have 2 acres with Thrive. And so they're really, really close. And I think the reason for us not wanting to license them together was that we wanted to be able to differentiate and be able to say, there are things, because of our wait list, there are a lot of families who are still looking for high quality childcare, who are looking for different things than what we do at the Red Barn. And so we wanted to be able to offer that. I do think it's very important that people have choices and options. And like you said, not have to move to town and just take the first thing that has an opening, because that's not necessarily where you find what you're looking for. And so that's important to us to be able to offer something different and that meets the needs of the community.
Yeah, that's great. So how has that made, or I guess I imagine that has made marketing a little bit more challenging for you, because you have two different brands, you have two different identities, you have two different marketing messages, different services, maybe different voices for the business. So how are you, I guess, working through that challenge, marketing?
Well, that's something brand new, because for the Red Barn, we never really had to do that. We were basically like word of mouth, and that was always working. And I think that that will hold true for Thrive as well. But I do think that I need to be a little bit more intentional about, the marketing piece. And it didn't have a very strong social media presence before, a very user-friendly website as far as using that to like get the information and to join CRM, all of that stuff. So, I have learned, thankfully, through the university, a lot of things over the past year about, Google ads, Facebook ads, like so much I have learned from y'all that I feel prepared, that even though I haven't necessarily needed some of those things up until now that I do, I know what to do. So.
Okay, that's fair. And I feel like we always run into challenges no matter what they are in our business that we haven't encountered before. And like you said, you have worked for so many years to build this great reputation. You've run on a wait list so long that you haven't needed to market. And so I think you're sharing with me even before we started recording this call that, sometimes like you feel like you have to learn new things. And we're all doing that, right? To adapt and grow our businesses. You have to be reminded of the basics sometimes and come back and just kind of keep trying new things until you find something that works really well for you. How do you involve teachers or parents in your marketing or in your outreach to your community?
Well, thankfully, they are our biggest cheerleaders. A lot of times, I think we talk sometimes about in the community group about like, the mom groups and the things like that. And that could be, challenging. But I always, they're our biggest cheerleaders, really. If somebody asks a question or they say, who should we take our children to? I don't have to respond, because they're the first ones to jump on the page and be like, you should go here. This is the, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and sometimes it's even people that I don't know, which is really cool and interesting, because I'm like, oh, thank you so much for the recommendation. I don't even know. I did never had you here, but hey, that's great. I'll take that recommendation. So that's always been great. And so I think that just goes back to tie into those relationships with you build with the families, that even if their child has been gone for 10, 15 years, they still remember being here, and they'll continue to share that experience with people down the road.
All right. I agree. Now, you've shared a lot of your wisdom. You've been in this for a lot of years, a couple of decades. You're starting your next location. You're good with a wait list. So obviously, parents love you. All right. Parents love you. Children enjoy being there. You're making a difference. You're expanding. You know what you're doing. But what did you wish you knew when you first started a child care center? What is one little tidbit of information that you wish you knew when you first started?
I feel like I wish I knew that so many things, but the one thing that I wish I knew, and I know we've had this conversation before, was that being an absentee owner or somebody who's more hands off doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. You get to set the tone for that. You get to choose what that looks like. And so I've always said for the longest time, I never want to be an absentee owner. I always want to know what's going on in my program, and I always want to be involved in everything. And I don't want to just, leave people hanging and blah, blah, blah. But just because that was, one of my experiences very, very early on in my career doesn't mean that that's what that looks like for me. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be, really, if anything, you being more hands off is a testament to your staff and your leadership. And so you just have to set the tone for what that looks like. It doesn't mean, and I have been one of the worst people to delegate and to not get sucked back in. And I say that as I'm currently doing it right now because that's just the season that we're in. But I know it can be done. I have done it before, and I plan on doing it again where I am more hands off. But I feel like just knowing that it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing for you. It's a really good thing for you. And it can be good for your staff. It empowers them. And I just wish that I knew that a long time ago, but it's okay.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth about empowering, because yes, sometimes we do have to jump back in and get back in the saddle for a little bit, for a season, while we're filling a seat or going through a transition. But so many owners don't realizing how empowering their team with some delegated responsibilities or just areas of responsibilities, like you're responsible for this and I'm not going to step on your toes, and letting them make mistakes and letting them fail. Even if one thing fails completely, they're going to learn so much about how to do it right the next time. And when they do it right, like, your impact multiplies because more hands and more people are in the pot, and you know what I mean? And they're reaching more people, making a bigger ripple and having a bigger impact. So that is something that I struggle with myself too. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm bothering people if I delegate too much stuff, or they don't know how to do it. I'll just do it myself. But it always turns out better when I just hand it over and be like, I need this done. Can you take care of it? And let them figure out how. I'll support. But yeah, I love that you do that, and you brought out how it does empower them. It levels them up. We're supposed to raise more leaders, right?
Yeah.
So, well, Jessica, I thank you so much for being with me here today. We've learned a lot about your growth journey, a little bit about, some of the minor struggles you're facing, as far as like enrollment and rebranding and, your new school, but it's all exciting struggles, right? It's just, it's progress. One piece of advice would you give to a childcare business owner that may be struggling right now, or maybe looking to go to the next level in their business, but they're not quite sure what to do? They feel stuck. What advice would you give to that struggling business owner?
Well, you're not paying me to say this, but I would get a coach. I would get a coach 100%, because that is, obviously been a huge positive thing for us, my husband and I especially. And not only just do you get coaches, you get a community. And that has been huge. You mentioned Diane earlier. Diane is one of my accountability partners. I love Diane. But there's so many people in the university that I just am inspired by, and I look to for guidance. And I'm just, even if they're going through something that I haven't gone through yet, like, I know that down the road, if that's where I'm at, I can reach out to them, and everybody is so encouraging. And, even if it's not Child Care Genius, I'm going to say that, because, everybody is not for everybody. And there's a lot of coaches out there that are good, but this is just where we landed, and I feel like we made the right decision with the community and the coaches that we've had and the support that we've had over the past year. And I really think that if you're struggling in your business, that you just need a support system, and that's what it will provide for you.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think coaching really, really can help you see maybe some areas where you're falling short. It can open your eyes to new systems that usually comes with the community, like you talked about. And I happen to think that Child Care Genius University is one of the best coaching programs. So thank you for agreeing there. But, if we're not the right fit, find somebody that is the right fit, that can help you see new things, open your mind to some new possibilities, and help guide you on some of the next steps to reach the goals that you have for your business. And we'd love to help you figure that out. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, man, I would like to expand, I would like to exit, I would like to invest, I would like to grow, I would like to have enough staff, whatever it is that you're struggling with, go to our website, childcaregenius.com. Click for a free coaching call, and we'd be happy to chat with you about that and maybe give you a few pointers, talk to you a little bit about how the university will help. But it's no obligation. It's just there for help and resource. So love to see you connect with us. Also, I would like to thank you, Jessica, for joining us on the podcast this week. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, inspiring stories. And to those of you listening, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Childcare Genius podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. Don't forget to visit our website at childcaregenius.com to see a list of services we offer to help grow your childcare business. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the Childcare Genius community.